Good day or evening. I hope all is well with you. Welcome to Filling Your Soul, living with meaning and purpose through the wisdom of the Kabbalah. I am so pleased and honored to welcome Elizabeth Johnston with us as our guest speaker. Certified autobiography instructor Elizabeth Johnston is passionate about the power of writing to transform our lives. With over 20 years of teaching experience, she is a skillful workshop facilitator and story coach. Elizabeth takes great joy in cultivating environments where creativity can flourish for those in her programs at university, online, and in private sessions. Her book, No Small Potatoes, for which she was awarded a Canada Council Writing Grant, was published in 2008. In 2013, she was awarded a Professional Development Grant to write, direct, and produce a video poem, Keepsake. She was also the script consultant for a short film that premiered at Cannes in 2013. Her current project is the upcoming book, The Art of Living, How Creativity Transforms You. Welcome, Elizabeth.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
I'm so thrilled that you are here. I just want to comment that I have attended, as you know, a couple of your workshops online, and I have to say that you have really brought out the creativity within me. You've helped me a lot, and I really greatly appreciate it. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. It's my pleasure.
Okay. So my first question, Elizabeth, is in the Kabbalistic teachings, living a meaningful and purposeful life is a key concept. Can you please share your thoughts about living with meaning and purpose, and also your personal journey that has led you to its fulfillment?
Yes, definitely. With pleasure. So I wanted to actually ask you a question and your listeners out there a question. When people get to the end of their life or nearing the end of their life, what do you think that the number one concern is that they have?
I think that their concern is, did they make their life useful? Did they do something with their life that made a difference? Did they feel fulfilled in what they did? Perhaps did they help others? Those are my thoughts.
Yeah. And that's spot on. You know, a lot of times people will at the end have these regrets that they didn't do that thing that they were passionate about. You know, maybe they wanted to write a book, or maybe they wanted to do painting or sculpture, and they regretted not following through on that. And it isn't just like, oh, I wish I had taken a little course or, you know, did a tap class. No, it's that they had something inside of them that wanted expression, that connected to meaning and purpose for them, but they pushed that aside and instead were quote unquote responsible, right? No, I have, you know, a family to take care of, or I've got mortgage to pay, or, you know, so all of these other things which are important, but they prioritized that and pushed aside what was really important to them. And, you know, I think some people might be surprised at that, you know, that you carry those regrets with you. And so, you know, for me, I really think that it's important that when we're feeling lackluster, when we're feeling like that we're not fulfilled, or, you know, I think sometimes even people can't articulate it, but they don't feel as alive and creative as they did when they were kids. You know, sometimes they can't even remember that feeling. And so I think it's really important, you know, if you're going to live a life with meaning and purpose, is that you have to act on those passions that you have. And I'm going to give you a couple of examples and then give you an example from my own life. So the first example is Engel Jones, and he's a podcaster. And I met him in the online world through Facebook. And a couple of years ago, he decided that he was going to create a podcast and conduct 1,001 interviews in 3 months. And they were 12-minute conversations. And you have a podcast, so you know to do 1,001 interviews in 3 months is a huge undertaking, even if they're just 12 minutes, right?
Amazing.
Yeah. So he set himself this goal, and he didn't actually meet it, but I think he got into the 800s, you know, in 3 months, which is phenomenal. And so then later, you know, fast forward to now, and I think that was two years ago he started that. Fast forward to now, and you won't believe what he's doing. I believe he's from Jamaica, And he is touring all of North America with his wife and going to all of the places where he interviewed those over 800 people. And he's interviewing them again in person as he's driving all across North America. And he was here a few weeks ago interviewing me. We were down by the canal where I live by the canal. It was a lovely day. And so now he's trying to interview all those people again, plus get up to that 1001. So he's interviewing new people as he's going along. And I'm quite sure that, when he nears the end, that he's not going to regret not taking that chance. He had to do a fundraiser, Kickstarter, to get some funding to do that. But he made it happen, so there's that. And for him, the meaning and purpose in that is to make connections. Right. So that's something that he believes in strongly. Right. And so that's why he created the podcast. And that's why he's following it up with these second round of interviews. The other example is Angelique Beauregard. And she's actually a client of mine. She runs a family business of school buses. So they supply school buses for the region. And a few years ago, she decided that she was going to do something about her weight. And she was really successful with that. And she became a coach. And then now she's written a book and she's launching her career, a new career in the second half of her life based on her passion and meaning, so both of them have identified something in their lives that is meaningful to them and is purposeful and that they can help others with it. So I think that, those two examples in of themselves are very inspiring. But the other thing that I wanted to share with you is my own story. And so I've always done creative things. I've always written. That's primarily how I express my creativity. But I do it in other ways as well, making jewelry, taking dance classes. So there's a lot of outlets that I've experienced. But after I went to university, I started teaching. And I taught a variety of classes, including creative writing, which is what I still do now. And after a while, I realized that I was feeling a little bit lackluster and I was feeling a little bit stressed out. And even though I was teaching a creative discipline, I think sometimes people looking in from the outside say, oh, you're so lucky you get to teach creative writing, or, oh, you're so lucky you get to teach dance, or whatever it is. But that can actually translate into something that's not fulfilling depending on the culture of the environment that you're working in. And also, when you're so busy helping other people access their creativity, sometimes you forget about yourself, right?
Like the shoemaker.
Yeah. And so I realized that, I took stock of my life and I thought, okay, so what's going on? And even though I was teaching creative writing and I was actively writing. I have lots of articles published, book reviews, in magazines, newspapers. So I was constantly busy and I was practicing my craft. But what was missing was that I wasn't pursuing a project that I felt was independently meaningful and purposeful just for me. So you mentioned in my bio that in 2008, I published my book, No Small Potatoes. And that was a culmination of many years, actually, of doing research and traveling to different countries and interviewing different people. And then finally in 2008, it was published. And then I didn't do another personally creative project until 2013, even though there was a lot of articles and magazine articles published during that time from 2008 to 2013. But it was 2013, or actually the year before that, that's when I sat back and I said, what's going on here? It's like I'm not feeling, so wonderful, I guess. I'm not feeling as I used to. And that's when I realized that, I've got to do something for me. And so then I created that video poem, Keepsake. And that is what drove it really firmly home for me, is that creativity is something that needs to be cultivated. Everybody has it. Everybody needs it. And it's really the spark that fuels your life and helps you do those projects that you feel are meaningful and purposeful. And so for me, I realized I had to activate and cultivate my creativity again. And so that's what I did in 2013. And I am now working on another book, which is actually based on my podcast that I have, Own Your Creativity. So for me, I felt that I learned a really important lesson, that even though I am naturally creative, that you do need to pay attention to it. It's just like a relationship that you have with somebody else. You know, if they're really important to you, you make time in your life for them and you cultivate that relationship. And so that's what I realized, that you can't necessarily take it for granted, you know, that it's just going to work on its own. You have to work in tandem with it.
I so agree with you. And I really wasn't aware of that. When I was younger, I thought, oh, she's talented, he's talented. And I have to say that I'm in touch with it more, and that when I take a certain time in the morning before everything gets crazy, and I can pursue, you know, writing and journaling, and I just feel like so fulfilled. I feel like I've accomplished something, and the day is just wonderful for me because of that.
Yeah. It makes such a difference when you make room for that in your life.
Yes, so thank you for sharing this with everybody. So, Elizabeth, what tips can you offer to listeners that can teach and inspire them to connect to their passion or what they love to do and live their dreams?
This is a wonderful, lovely question. I love this one. And it actually is a nice segue into what I was just saying from before. Because for me, there's 3 things that people can do, 3 tips, and then an extra one at the end. So the first tip is make room. The second tip is pick fruit. And the third tip is share. So I'm going to explain those 3 things. So make room, pick fruit, and share. So make room is basically what you did, and what you just were talking about is how in the morning before things get too harried, that's what you do, is you sit down and you do some writing, and that it enriches and kind of sets the frame for the rest of the day. But it's really important to make room. We're all so busy, and I think that's one of the reasons that our passions or our meaning kind of go by the wayside along with our creativity when we don't decide to make room. And sometimes something has to give. You know, sometimes we have to delegate a bit of the chores around the house to somebody else, or sometimes we just have to take stock of everything that we do, and we usually do way too much, but everything that we do, and then say, okay, this is not as important to me as making room for my creativity so that I can fulfill my meaning and purpose. And make room is the first tip. The second tip is to pick fruit. And by this, what I mean is after you've decided to make room in your life for that creativity, then you look around and what is the low-hanging fruit right in front of you? What is it that you can do now that's going to advance your goals or your exploration of your creativity, develop some meaning and purpose in your life? And I think that a big mistake people make is they realize, okay, something's wrong in my life, I've got to change it. And then they try to change too much all at once. And in fact, they decide, okay, I'm going to write this opus, I'm going to write this screenplay. And then they don't do anything about it because it's too big of a goal. They don't know how to break it down. And they've never done it before. So it's this kind of scary journey. And so when you put something in front of you that's way too big, then it's going to be difficult for you to stay on track and stay motivated. But if you break it down into, okay, I would like to write this memoir, let's say, but I'm not exactly sure what I want to write about. So let me just, take 5 minutes or 10 minutes every day for the next week or 2 and just explore some of those ideas. And so don't try to, eat the elephant all at once. You can, they're saying you can't eat an elephant all at once, but you can spoon by spoon, right? So whatever your elephant is, break it down into bite-sized lumps. And then once you achieve those little steps, you feel that accomplishment, which fuels your motivation to continue on. So just, look at what you can do now as opposed to what you can't do in the long run. So what can you do? And then choose those paths that are easiest, follow up on now. And the last tip is to share. And by this mean to engage with the community, because a lot of times people think writers are going to be squirreling away in their office and just writing things, and then somehow by magic people will find them and publish them, or find out about their writing, but nobody will find out about what you're doing or the project that you're trying to put together unless you engage with your community. And, just like they say that it takes a village to raise a child, it takes a village, it takes a community of like-minded people for us to fulfill our meaning and purpose. Because just like a work of art, our projects that fulfill us need other people to complete them, right? So we have to get out there and we have to engage with people, find our tribe. Maybe that will be volunteering, at a film festival. If you wanted to write a screenplay, maybe some place to start is to volunteer at a neighborhood film festival and start meeting people. Something like that. So those are the 3 steps. And then after that, feel free to make any course corrections. You start with making some room, taking some small steps, taking action, and then sharing it. So then you kind of get feedback and then you realize like, oh, okay, that was interesting. I volunteered at this film festival for science fiction. I'm not so fussy about science fiction, but I really like the horror genre, right? So if you thought initially, oh, I'm going to write, a science fiction film, but then you realize, no, actually, I like this one. So, feel free to course correct, but always with the idea that it's going to bring you closer to fulfilling your meaning and purpose and your creativity.
Thank you. Really wonderful tips for all of us. It's great to be flexible and open to possibilities. Like you say, you never know who you're going to meet, what's going to happen that will click something off inside of you and change a little bit the path that you're on.
Exactly.
Thank you. So, Elizabeth, how can we all remain positive and continue to move forward in the face of personal inner and outer challenges that are part of the human condition?
Yeah, I think what's important here is 2 things that we need to acknowledge and alchemize. So in my own life as well, like I've shared with you already, I was on the path of doing creative stuff and I was happy with what I was doing. But then I experienced something that I'm not so happy anymore. So what am I going to do? I'm going to acknowledge that I am feeling that way. And then I'm going to alchemize the situation. I'm going to change it. I'm going to look around for, okay, so what can I do? This is the situation I'm in. This is the town that I'm in. And what are my options? How can I create the environment where I'm going to thrive? And so I think that it's important, like things happen, we lose people, we lose pets, we lose, loved ones, we could lose a job. I mean, there's so many things that could happen to us, but it's important to acknowledge, okay, that happened. Now what am I going to do next?
And you think it's good for people to journal their feelings about their experiences on a regular basis? Because I know that weeks could go by where you don't think about what happened and it just kind of, you hold everything inside. So what are your thoughts about that?
Oh, yes, I definitely agree. I mean, I'm a big proponent of writing in general, and I think journal writing is fabulous for this, especially when you're feeling out of sorts. Journaling has many purposes and uses, but in this case, I think it's really valuable to put down, in a journal, it's like acknowledge what's going on and saying to yourself, okay, I'm not happy with this. So when was I happy? What were the conditions? Were there, other events in my life previous to this? How can I get back to that? Or if I can't get back to that, how can I pivot to a place that's going to bring me to a positive place where I can continue my life of meaning and purpose? And so journal writing is, I think, invaluable for that exploration and that reframing, reframing of the situation. Because oftentimes people think, oh, this happened and this means a horrible outcome and there's no other way. But oftentimes when you're journaling, you're saying, okay, so that experience kind of sucked, but what's the silver lining there? What can I take from it that can help me move forward? And sometimes it's, people balk at even considering that there could be anything positive that you could take away from, like, let's say somebody's dying or somebody getting sick, sometimes people balk at that, but there's always a way of, with respect, looking at a situation and saying, okay, so what does that say about me that, this thing happened and it didn't lay me down for ever. I am back. I'm sitting at my desk. I'm writing about it. I'm being proactive, right? So what does that say about you? It says you have resiliency, right? It says you have stick-to-itiveness. And so when we can think about it in terms of those positives that bring us to the table to find a solution, not that we're going to necessarily right away, but that we're willing and open to consider the possibilities, So just realizing that as a silver lining can really help you move forward out of that situation.
Yes. And it's so wonderful that we can recognize that we have something inside of us. We could trust ourselves, and we can build a skill by doing this on a regular basis. And to know that there are ways to feel at peace once we start writing and figuring things out. And of course, we can always seek help from mentors and friends and family, but there's so much that we have inside that we don't even know we have.
Oh, I believe that. I really do. I agree with you 100%. I think that there's depths within us that we're probably continually surprised about when we actually look at it. And I think, that number one deathbed concern is related to that, that people get to the end of their lives and they realize that they had so much within them that they could have drawn upon and brought out to help other people. Because I think that's part of living a life of meaning and purpose, is that we each have some answer to the question of life, but also how to live with meaning and purpose. We each have a little slice of that answer. And if we don't access it and figure out how to share it with other people, then we're doing ourselves a disservice, but also everybody else in our orbit, because they could have benefited from our wisdom.
Yes. So it benefits all of us to take a look at how we would feel at the end of our life and what we'd like to do with our lives now.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I really greatly appreciate your participation today, Elizabeth. And I just wondered if there are any last thoughts that you can leave with us.
Yes. Thank you for asking that. So I think that if you just decide that you're going to write for 5 minutes a day, you'd be amazed at what you could achieve. And this is 5 minutes every single day, 365 days a year. So every single day, including Saturday and Sunday, everybody has 5 minutes. And if you don't have 5 minutes, then you probably need to take a lot more than 5 minutes just to relax, right? Because as I was saying before, we often do way too much today, and that diverts us from our meaning and purpose. So if you just decide, I'm going to work on this for 5 minutes a day, and sometimes, that'll translate into 100 words if you do it by longhand, which I highly recommend. But if you type it, it could be up to 300 words, maybe even more. And so if you multiply that by 356 days, that's a lot of words at the end. You could almost have a novella written by the end of the year.
I loved pick up here. I loved when I worked with you, how you mentioned about just to write for 5 minutes. And it's wonderful because you don't think about, I'm doing this wrong, or I can't think of anything. You just start writing, and it's just a wonderful experience.
Yes, definitely. And the beauty of doing it 5 minutes a day, every single day, is that it's very easy to pick up where you left off. And then sometimes things emerge that there's a longer story. And maybe there are some things that are just one-offs, but oftentimes because it's still in your mind, not more than 24 hours have passed before you've sat down and continued writing. So it's easier to have that continuity. But if you decide, okay, I'm going to use my 35 minutes per week and just do it on Saturdays, then it's not going to be as efficient because a whole week has passed, and you're going to spend some time thinking, now, where was I? And what was I saying? And so you're going to be wasting actually some of that time, and you're going to be losing some words.
And then eventually when people are feeling real comfortable with it, they can increase it a little. Could they take 5 minutes, take a break, and then take another 5 minutes? Or what are your thoughts on that?
Yes, definitely. And the reason why I say 5 minutes is that everybody has 5 minutes that they can afford. But oftentimes when we sit down, we get so engrossed with the writing that it extends beyond the 5 minutes. But the key here is that I was saying earlier about the low-hanging fruit, right? So what can you do? What action can you take right now in your life that's doable for you? And 5 minutes a day is great. And so if you achieve your 5 minutes, you can pat yourself on the back and feel wonderful. But if you go beyond that, that's great. right? That's just, gravy. But, as long as you do your 5 minutes, then you've met your goal. But if it's longer, great. And I have another story that actually connects to this. A few years ago, before I started teaching full time, I was in between jobs and I thought, okay, my job starts in January. I have, a couple of months between now and then. So I took a temp job, a secretarial job. And I personally don't really like secretarial work. And, but I knew I had to, pay some bills. And so I thought, okay, just suck it up and take this job. But it was a 6-week contract, which was perfect for me. But I knew that it was going to be difficult for me to fit in my writing after I came home from work, because the kind of work that I was doing really drains me. And, by the time that you come home, I was living about an hour and a half away from where I had to do this job. So I had a long commute there and back. And I knew that by the time that I came home and made my dinner and got, things sorted out in the house, cleaning and all that kind of stuff, that the only thing I was fit for was just sitting in front of the television and vegging out for an hour before I went to bed. And then I would feel bad about myself because actually I did have that whole hour. Instead of watching TV, I could have been writing. And then I would feel bad about myself. So I thought, how am I going to avoid feeling bad about myself and yet doing this job that I don't really like? But I have to do that. And so I decided that I was going to get up early in the morning. I got up at 4:30 in the morning. And I wrote for an hour before I had to get ready for work. And whenever I tell that story to people, there's gasps. It's like, oh my God, 4:30 in the morning, a whole hour before you really had to get up. They couldn't do it. But I decided that I needed to do that for me. And it was the best thing that I'd ever done for myself, because it made that secretarial job fly by. I didn't have any of the angst or the tiredness after work. And I found that actually after work, I did find a bit of energy after work to do a little bit of the writing. So it really showed me that when you make room in your life for your creativity, when you put yourself first, that it transforms everything else. I was in a more generous mood, because I got what was done, got what was important to me. I got that done first. And then I had so much more to give other people in the workplace. So, and it flew by. So I think it's really important that, even if it were only 15 minutes that I was willing to get up earlier, that would have been okay. Or even 5 minutes, that would have been okay. For me, I did an hour, but, doing it first. And you were saying that, you get up in the morning and write in your journal before things get all hairy, scary. And I think that's important. I think, that we should do things, put ourselves first, put our oxygen mask on first. You're no good to anybody in the plane or your kids, if you don't put your oxygen mask on first.
Yes, and it's so energizing and vitalizing. And that's part of meaning, living with meaning, to feel that way and to feel that you're using your creativity and to feel that you're going to be able to be there to help people with joy.
Yes, it's so important.
Thank you. So what's the best way for people to get in touch with you, Elizabeth?
So the best way to get in touch with me is to go to my website, ownyourcreativity.com. That's ownyourcreativity.com. And right now I'm running a free 5-day writing challenge on Facebook. And it's to kickstart your creativity, kickstart your writing habit. It starts on August 6th. And if you go to ownyourcreativity.com, you can join there. And I hope I see you there.
Great. Thank you for offering that to all the people here. That's ownyourcreativity.com.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, Elizabeth, thank you so much for being here with us and for all your knowledge, your wisdom, your insights, all the tips on living with meaning and purpose and how to find it within ourselves. And I wish you much success in all of your endeavors.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure. And I love your podcast. What you're doing is so valuable. I'm just over the moon to be part of this, and keep doing what you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. And I have to say, in life, sometimes things are challenging. And I find that when you do something that you really love to do, it just makes you feel good about everything else, just kind of like what you were saying. So I'm enjoying doing the podcast, even though it's challenging to learn all the different skills. but it's spreading out to other things. It's making me feel more fulfilled. And so I hope that everyone else can find what they truly love to do. And I thank all of you for having joined us as well. So God willing, until we meet again, wishing you health, happiness, success, and blessings. Thank you again, Elizabeth.
Thank you.